Well, I was just astounded when Trump came into office for term 2, and he didn't talk about having a mandate and passing laws with Congress to implement it. He talked about this executive order, that executive order, and everything he started doing. Not only was it operating through edicts, if you will, like a king, but he also started to appropriate the powers that belong to Congress, the power of the purse, the power of taxation, and eventually a question of war. And we, for the first time, we have an authoritarian president who's trying to turn our democratic republic into a strongman state. And in looking at the literature of how this has happened around the world, places like Nicaragua, like Hungary, like Russia, like Turkey, there's 10 strategies that an authoritarian uses. And I said, well, are these happening here? So I went to the floor for my very long through-the-night speech a year ago to ring the alarm bells and say, this isn't just a debate about policy. This is actually a real attack on the architecture of our republic. And those strategies, they're everything from firing the inspector generals on the front end, the referees, putting loyalists who are basically incompetent in positions of power, and then proceeding to things like preparing troops to be on the streets and weaponizing the Department of Justice with an enemies list, and, of course, most dangerously rigging the upcoming election. So 10 items. And so those 10 items reveal real vulnerabilities that we didn't know we had. We thought with our norms and our laws and our court system backing it up, could never happen here, why this happened in other countries, and yet it's happening. So this bill says, let's take those same 10 strategies an authoritarian is using right now, President Trump, to create a strongman state, and let's recognize we have to prepare to fix them. And let's start that conversation now. Each one of them, what can we do to address this vulnerability? Because we have got to stop any other president, any other time, from thinking that they can turn this into an authoritarian
Senator,
state.
can I ask you about that? Because as I'm talking to people across the country and whatnot, it feels as though that there are a camp of people that feel like we have to rebuild, that post-Trump, Democrats are going to have to, if they win the presidency, they're going to have to rebuild what has been broken. And then there's a camp of people across the country that feel like ain't no rebuilding, we're going to have to start anew. Normal is subjective. This feels like a rebuild, and why rebuild and not reimagine something new? Because I think that there are, myself included, should Democrats be out here talking about how to restore these institutions? I think a lot of people out across the country are not concerned about the institutions, are concerned about the progress that they've lost, the civil rights that they've lost, and they're maybe iffy if the institutions are the best place for that, like to be defended.
The old institutions.
Yeah, the old institutions.
Yeah. Well, let's think about that, like disregarding due process. We have a secret police that's knocking down doors and dragging people out of their homes, dragging them out of their cars. How are we going to stop that? Well, we're going to have much firmer laws with consequences in order to rein in that tactic. That's just an example. That's rebuilding something new and stronger and better than what we had before. And I think about each one of these like the president's strategy to rig the elections. If we don't save the integrity of the ballot box and the peaceful transfer of power, then we can kiss our republic goodbye. So, yes, these aren't just Band-Aids. This is major surgery, and I think that's the point you're making. It can't just be little fixes here and there. We got to understand, there are 3 big tasks ahead of us, and one of them is to stop the corruption of Donald Trump. What he's done with the office. A second one is deliver on the fundamentals for families to thrive: health care, housing, education, a good-paying job. And the third is to restore the integrity of government by and for the people. And by the way, that includes things that Donald Trump didn't break. They were already broken.
Right.
Like the money in
politics.
Might take a minute. Money in politics.
Right.
Yeah.
Senator, when you're talking about the fixing of things, post-Watergate, there were some norms and laws that were put in there. And if you look at the kinds of things that we're seeing at the DOJ, there might have to be some of that, too. Let's play what Todd Blanche said on handling Trump's pressure if he was confirmed.
How do you advise the president on the difference between what he may want to see and the rules of evidence and the confines of law that you have to adhere to?
As a Deputy Attorney General, I was in charge of the U.S. attorneys, so it's not as if I remain blissfully unaware of what will happen if I'm confirmed. President Trump, when he talks about what he expects this department to do to make this country safe, I don't think the American people should look at that as some sort of threat to me or warning to me.
Senator, why should we, the American people, why should the world not look at when President Trump talks about what he expects this department to do, that is a threat, an edict, a mandate to the DOJ? We saw when he sent out a post about Tish James and James Comey that he wanted them indicted, and what happened very quickly and soon after. We're not stupid. The American people are very smart. They're sophisticated. They understand how these things work. And yet, Todd Blanche is trying to pretend as if we don't all know how this is going to shake out.
We saw the response to Jeanine Pirro,
exactly.
who apparently didn't do what he thought she should do.
Fold like an umbrella.
So, I mean, look at the track record here. You've got the Epstein files, where he didn't release 3 million pages. He released 3, but he didn't release the other 3. And then the ones he released, he didn't vet to protect the victims. Let's look at the fact that no one in America has been indicted regarding the Epstein's acts, whereas people overseas were following left and right.
Prime Minister lost his job.
And yes, that's right. And here is a man who is already in charge of the weaponizing of the Justice Department against the political enemies list. He's not coming into this office saying, I'm going to be loyal to the law. He's coming in saying, I'm loyal to the king, to the president. I'm going to do his work. And talk about the defense of the cash for cronies at $1.8 billion. I mean, that thing is still alive despite the 2 senators who weighed in to try to kill it.
Does it actually matter if Todd Blanche is the Attorney General? Does it? Because at the end of the day,
crazy.
Donald.
Why are you asking that?
I'm answering. No, this is the case. Because at the end of the day, Donald Trump is going to do what Donald Trump wants to do.
I don't know what's in his cup.
And the DOJ is right.
It matters a lot.
But this is why. If it's not Blanche, it's going to be someone else who's going to do the bidding of Donald
Well, it could have been Matt Gaetz.
And he would do the same thing. My point is, at the end of the day, the edicts are coming from Donald Trump. The person who is at the head of the DOJ is more of a figurehead. We're seeing that around all of the agencies.
Well, in a way, what you're saying is the confirmation process isn't working because an acting person can be put in place if Congress refuses to confirm someone. And this Congress is a rubber stamp. I mean, the Republicans, led by the majority leader and by the speaker, haven't said we're defending the Constitution and have the gravitas to say, Mr. President, we may love you, you are the same party, but you stepped over the line and we are defending Congress and the Constitution.
So what do you
That's
think,
not happening.
What do you think Murkowski and Cassidy do? They just met with Mr. Blanche.
Well, so he only needs if
one needs to fall.
Well, no, if
two.
Two. They all, in addition to Collins, there have to be 3 no's with McConnell absent, right? That defeats it. I believe somehow the president's going to get one of them to vote. Maybe they'll agree to do it together to make it less burdensome. But I have a hard time imagining Lisa Murkowski voting for this man. I really do.